If you clicked on this video right now, in this exact moment, I need you to stop scrolling for the next few minutes. Because what you're about to hear did not happen by accident. You did not stumble onto this video randomly, and you did not open it out of idle curiosity. Something inside you has felt unsettled lately. A quiet restlessness you couldn't quite explain, as if you were waiting for an answer without knowing the question. Maybe you have felt it late at night, lying awake for no reason. Maybe you have felt it in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, a strange ache that has nothing to do with anything happening around you. Tonight, that answer is going to find you. Because there are three very specific signs that reveal whether you are one of God's chosen ones for this exact season of your life. And I promise you, by the time we reach the third sign, you will understand something about your own story that you have never been able to put into words before. Stay with me until the end, because the third sign is the one almost everyone misses, and it is the one that changes everything for the person who finally sees it. Most people quit watching videos like this one, right before the part that matters most. So I'm asking you, just this once, to stay a little longer than you normally would, because what is coming will be worth it. Before we go any further, I want to clear something up, because so many people misunderstand what it actually means to be chosen. Being chosen by God has nothing to do with fame, comfort, or a life free of struggle. It has nothing to do with being better than anyone else, more talented, more deserving, or more spiritual on the outside than the people sitting beside you in church, at work, or at your own dinner table. In fact, almost every person in history who was chosen for something significant felt, in the moment they were called, completely unqualified for it. Being chosen is not a reward for having already arrived somewhere. It is an invitation into a process that has not finished shaping you yet. C.S. Lewis spent much of his life writing about a particular kind of longing, an ache that never quite goes away no matter how much the world tries to satisfy it with entertainment, achievement, or comfort. He believed that longing was not a flaw in a person, but a signal, a compass pointing towards something realer than anything this world can offer. He described it as a kind of homesickness, for a home you have never physically been to, a memory of a place you have never visited, but somehow still miss. He believed the people who feel that ache the strongest are usually the ones being prepared for something they cannot yet see, and that the ache itself is proof that they were built for more than the temporary comforts everyone else seems content to settle for. If you have felt that ache lately, that unexplainable pull towards something more, toward purpose, toward meaning that you cannot fully define, that is not depression, and it is not just a passing phase in your life. That ache is a sign, but it is only the beginning of what I want to show you. Think about the people throughout history who were chosen for something greater than themselves, because none of them looked the part in the moment they were called. Moses did not feel like a leader. He was a man hiding in the desert, unsure of his own voice, running from a past he was ashamed of, tending sheep in obscurity for decades after fleeing the only life he had ever known. And yet he was the one asked to stand in front of the most powerful ruler of his time and demand freedom for an entire enslaved nation. Joseph did not look like someone destined for greatness while he sat forgotten in a prison cell, betrayed by the very brothers who should have protected him, sold into slavery by his own family before he was even given the chance to prove himself. Esther did not walk into a palace thinking she would be the one to save her people from destruction. She was an orphaned girl, raised by an uncle, given no reason to believe her life mattered on a national scale, and yet she became the very person history remembers for saving an entire people. Gideon, when he was called, described himself as the least significant person in his entire family, hiding in a winepress from danger instead of preparing to lead an army, and yet he became the one who led his people to an impossible victory. David, the youngest of his brothers, was not even called in from the fields when the prophet came looking for a future king. His own father did not think to include him. He was outside tending sheep, smelling like the animals he cared for, completely overlooked by everyone in his own household. And yet he was the one anointed that day, the one whose story would echo for thousands of years after his death. None of these people were chosen because they were the strongest, the most confident, the most educated, or the most prepared. They were chosen because they were willing, and because they were being shaped for something they could not yet see the full shape of. If you have ever looked at your own life and thought, why would God use someone like me? That thought alone tells you more about your calling than you realize. Because the ones who ask that question honestly, without pride, without pretending to already have it all figured out, are almost always the ones who end up walking into it. So let's talk about the first sign, the one that shows up quietly, long before anything visible changes on the outside. The first sign that you are one of God's chosen ones for this season is a deep, persistent dissatisfaction with things that used to satisfy you completely. Maybe you used to feel content scrolling through your phone for hours, distracting yourself with noise, filling your time with things that felt harmless and entertaining. But lately, none of it feels the same. The noise feels louder and emptier at the same time. Conversations that used to interest you now feel shallow, circling around the same topics that no longer hold your attention the way they once did. Achievements that used to excite you, the promotion, the compliment, the small personal win, now feel strangely hollow the moment you reach them, as if the satisfaction disappears faster than it used to. This is not you becoming ungrateful, and it is not you losing your joy. This is your spirit outgrowing the things that used to fit it. The way a person outgrows clothes they wore as a child. Clothes that once fit perfectly, but now feel tight and uncomfortable, no matter how much you try to force yourself back into them. C.S. Lewis wrote extensively about a certain kind of joy, a fleeting, piercing feeling that arrives unexpectedly and vanishes just as fast, leaving behind a hunger for more of it. A hunger that nothing in this world seems able to fully satisfy no matter how many times you chase it. He believed that hunger was proof that we were built for something beyond the temporary pleasures of this world, and that the discomfort we feel with shallow things is actually evidence that we are being pulled towards something deeper, something more permanent, something that will not disappear the moment the initial excitement wears off. If lately you find yourself craving silence more than entertainment, meaning more than distraction, depth more than noise, that restlessness is not a problem to be fixed with more scrolling or more distraction. It is a sign that something inside you is waking up from a sleep you didn't even realize you were in. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with this first sign too, one that is hard to explain to people who have not experienced it themselves. It is the loneliness of growing in a direction that the people around you are not growing in at the same pace. You might notice conversations feeling harder to relate to, humor that used to make you laugh, now falling flat. Environments that used to feel comfortable, now feeling slightly suffocating, as if the room got smaller even though nothing physically changed. This is one of the loneliest parts of being chosen, because it can feel like you're drifting away from people you love, when in reality, you are simply being prepared for a version of your life that not everyone around you is meant to walk into with you, at least not yet, and maybe not ever in the exact same way. This is painful, and I am not going to pretend it isn't, because pretending would make this message feel hollow, and you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort right now. But before you assume this sign means something is wrong with you, or that you have somehow drifted from God rather than closer to Him, I need you to understand something important, because this first sign by itself is not enough to confirm anything on its own. Almost anyone going through a hard season, a breakup, a loss, a period of exhaustion, can feel dissatisfied with life for a while. The real confirmation comes when this restlessness is paired with the second sign. And this is where most people, even deeply devoted believers who have followed their faith for years, get confused. Because the second sign does not feel like a blessing at all when you are living inside of it. It feels like the exact opposite of being chosen. It feels like being abandoned. The second sign that you are one of God's chosen ones is an increase in resistance the moment you try to move forward. This is the sign nobody wants to hear, because it sounds discouraging on the surface, almost like bad news dressed up as encouragement. But stay with me, because understanding this sign is what separates people who give up right before their breakthrough from people who push through into it and actually receive what was waiting for them on the other side. Have you noticed that the moment you decide to change, to grow, to pursue something meaningful, obstacles seem to multiply out of nowhere, almost as if the universe itself suddenly noticed you and decided to make things harder? Relationships get tense right when you needed peace the most. Doubt gets louder in your mind right when you needed clarity. Old temptations you thought you had already conquered years ago suddenly resurface with strange, almost aggressive intensity. Distractions appear at exactly the moment you finally sat down to focus on the thing that mattered. This is not a coincidence, and it is not punishment for something you did wrong. Anything valuable enough to be protected is valuable enough to be resisted, and the same logic applies to your calling. Think about it plainly for a moment. If your calling did not matter, if it carried no real weight, no real purpose, no real threat to whatever forces benefit from your stagnation, there would be nothing worth fighting to stop. The intensity of the resistance you face is often a direct reflection of the significance of what you are being prepared for. This is why so many people quit right at the edge of their breakthrough, sometimes only days or weeks away from the very thing they had been praying for. They mistake the resistance for a sign that they took a wrong turn somewhere, when in reality, the resistance is proof they are on the right path, moving towards something that matters enough to be contested by forces that would rather keep them comfortable, distracted, and small. I want you to picture someone standing at the edge of a decision that could completely change the direction of their life. Maybe it is walking away from a relationship that was slowly draining them of everything good, or leaving a job that felt safe but soul-crushing. The kind of job that pays the bills but quietly kills something inside a person a little more every single day. Or maybe it is finally facing a fear they had been avoiding for years, a conversation they needed to have, a dream they had buried under years of practicality. In the days leading up to that decision, everything in their life seems to push back against it at once. Old friends who never call suddenly reach out with distractions and invitations that pull attention away from what matters. Fear whispers, convincing reasons to stay comfortable exactly where they already are. Doubt tries to convince them they imagined the whole thing, that the restlessness was never real, that they should just go back to how things were before any of this started. And yet, almost without exception, on the other side of that resistance is exactly where their life changes forever, where the breakthrough they had given up hoping for finally arrives. This pattern repeats itself throughout history and throughout the lives of ordinary people who never expected to be used for anything significant. People no different from you or me, sitting in ordinary rooms, living ordinary lives, until the moment resistance showed up and either stopped them or refined them. The resistance is not there to stop you. It is there because something on the other side of it is worth stopping. And the forces that oppose you understand that better than you do in the moment you are living inside the struggle. If you have felt an unusual amount of pushback lately, in your mind, in your relationships, in your circumstances, right, when you try to take a step forward spiritually, that is your second sign, and it is confirmation, not condemnation, evidence you are moving in the right direction, not proof that you have somehow failed. But here is where I need you to lean in a little closer, because signs 1 and 2, taken together, still leave something missing, something incomplete. Plenty of people feel restless with their lives at some point. Plenty of people face resistance when they try to grow or change direction. What separates someone who is truly being prepared for a chosen purpose from someone simply going through a difficult season is the third sign, and this is the one that almost everyone overlooks entirely, because it does not feel like a sign at all in the moment. It feels like a burden. It feels heavier than it should feel, heavier than seems fair for someone who is supposedly being blessed. And yet, out of all 3 signs, it is the clearest evidence of all, the one that, once you notice it, you will not be able to unsee in your own life. The third sign that you are one of God's chosen ones is that you have started feeling responsible for people and situations that have nothing directly to do with you. Nothing you could reasonably be expected to carry. You find yourself carrying a weight for someone else's pain that you cannot logically explain to anyone who asks you why you seem distracted or heavy lately. You lie awake thinking about a person's struggle as if it were your own struggle. Someone you may not even know especially well. Someone whose burden simply landed on your heart without invitation. You feel an inexplicable urgency to speak encouragement into someone's life at the exact moment they needed it most, reaching out with a message or a call without knowing why you felt compelled to do it that particular day, only to find out later that your timing could not have been more perfect. You notice suffering in the world, in your community, in the lives of strangers you pass without ever speaking to, and instead of scrolling past it the way you might have done easily before, something inside you refuses to look away anymore. This is not you becoming overly emotional, and it is not you taking on things that are not your responsibility in an unhealthy way that will eventually exhaust you. This is the early formation of a shepherd's heart, The kind of heart that is being trained to carry weight on behalf of others, long before you are given any visible platform, title, or authority to do anything about it in a public way. C.S. Lewis wrote about a deeper magic behind the ordinary rules of the world we can see and measure, a hidden order that operates beneath the surface, invisible to those who are not looking for it, but unmistakable. Once you begin to notice it working quietly in your favor, even during your hardest seasons. He believed that real transformation was never about temporary comfort or the removal of every difficulty, but about becoming a certain kind of person, someone shaped and strengthened through trial in ways that comfort alone could never produce, no matter how long you waited for it. If you have started feeling a strange sense of duty toward people and situations that are not officially your responsibility on paper, if you feel a pull to pray for someone the moment they cross your mind for no obvious reason, if you feel compelled to show up for people, even when it costs you time, energy, or comfort, you would rather keep for yourself, that pull is not random, and it is not a personality flaw you need to correct. It is the deeper magic at work in your life, quietly shaping you into someone capable of carrying a purpose bigger than your own personal comfort. Someone the people around you will eventually need in ways neither of you can fully predict yet. This is often the sign that goes unnoticed the longest, because it doesn't feel like a blessing while you're inside of it. It feels like weight. It feels like responsibility you never asked for and never applied for. But every single person throughout history who was chosen for something significant carried this exact feeling long before they ever understood why they were carrying it. Think again about Joseph sitting in that prison cell, forgotten by nearly everyone who should have remembered him. Betrayed by his own blood, overlooked by the very people who owed him loyalty. And yet even there, in the lowest moment of his entire story, stripped of freedom, status, and family, he was the one who noticed the distress on the faces of the people around him and asked why they looked troubled. Even though he had every reason in the world to be consumed only by his own suffering, he didn't have power, he didn't have position, he didn't even have his freedom. But he had the third sign already forming quietly in him, a heart that noticed pain in others, even while carrying the full weight of his own unresolved pain. That single moment of noticing, of caring about someone else's burden while trapped in his own circumstances, was the very thing that eventually positioned him to save an entire nation from famine, including the same brothers who had betrayed him and left him for dead in every sense but the physical one. The weight he felt for others long before he had any authority to act on it was not wasted time. It was preparation disguised as suffering, the kind of preparation that never announces itself as preparation while it is happening. Think also about Daniel. Taken far from his home as a young man, living in a foreign land under a foreign king, stripped of nearly everything familiar to him, and yet even there, in exile, he carried the concerns of his people as though he had never left them behind. He prayed for a nation that could not see him praying, cared about a future he might never personally witness, and carried weight for outcomes far beyond his own daily survival. That kind of weight, carried quietly, without applause, without recognition, without any guarantee of ever seeing the results, is exactly the third sign we are talking about tonight. If you have ever cared about an outcome you may never personally benefit from, prayed for someone who will never know you prayed for them, or carried concern for a situation that technically has nothing to do with your own life, you already know this feeling intimately, even if you never had language for it until this very moment. If all three of these signs describe where you are right now, the restlessness with things that used to satisfy you completely, the increased resistance the moment you try to grow or move forward, and this strange, unexplainable weight you feel for people and situations beyond your own life, I want you to understand what this actually means for you. It does not mean your life is about to become easier overnight. In fact, it may become harder for a while longer, because chosen people are not exempt from difficulty. They are simply given the strength to carry more than they thought possible, and the character to use that strength for something beyond themselves, rather than only for their own comfort. What it does mean is that nothing you have felt over these past weeks or months has been random or meaningless. The restlessness was not a breakdown. It was an awakening you did not schedule, but desperately needed. The resistance was not a wrong turn. It was confirmation that you were finally heading somewhere worth resisting. And the weight you carry for others was not a burden meant to crush you into the ground. It was the early shape of a purpose still being formed inside you, one careful layer at a time, the way a sculptor slowly reveals a shape that was always hidden inside an unremarkable block of stone. Maybe you're sitting there right now, realizing that only one of these three signs describes you clearly, and the other two feel less certain, less obvious in your own life. That is completely fine, and it does not disqualify you from anything. These signs rarely appear all at once, fully formed, announcing themselves clearly on a specific date. They tend to unfold slowly, sign by sign, season by season, sometimes over the course of years rather than weeks. If even one sign resonated deeply with you tonight, that is enough to pay attention to, enough to sit with quietly instead of dismissing immediately. Growth is rarely dramatic in the moment it is actually happening. It usually looks like small, quiet shifts that only make sense when you look backward at them much later, once enough time has passed to see the full shape of what was forming the whole time. C.S. Lewis believed that the deepest transformation in a person's life rarely happens in the moments they expect it to, the moments that feel significant, dramatic, or clearly spiritual. It happens quietly, in the ordinary days, in the waiting, in the resistance, in the wait that seems to have no immediate reward or explanation attached to it. He believed that the goal was never simply to be happy in a shallow, temporary sense, chasing one fleeting pleasure after another, but to become the kind of person capable of carrying real joy, real purpose, and real love without being crushed by the weight of any of them. That kind of capacity is not built overnight, and it is never built through comfort alone. It is built exactly the way you may be experiencing your life right now, through restlessness that pushes you forward, resistance that strengthens you, and weight that stretches your capacity to care about something bigger than your own personal peace. If you have felt these three signs stirring in you over these recent weeks or months, this is your confirmation that you are exactly where you are supposed to be, even if it does not feel comfortable yet, even if it does not look impressive from the outside, even if no one around you has noticed anything different about you at all. You were not placed in this season by accident, and you were not drawn to this particular video, out of thousands of videos you could have clicked on tonight, by accident either. Something in you recognized the truth in these words before your mind even finished processing them fully. And that recognition is proof enough, more proof than any external sign could ever offer you. I want to leave you with this before we close. If even one of these three signs described your life right now, say so quietly, honestly, to yourself in this moment, or in the comments below if you want others walking through the same season to know they are not alone in it either. Naming what is happening in you is often the first step toward walking fully into it, rather than staying confused about it for another year. And if all three signs described you clearly tonight, take a moment right now, wherever you are watching this, whatever room you are sitting in, and simply acknowledge quietly that you are being prepared, not punished, refined, not rejected, chosen, not forgotten, no matter how forgotten you may have felt over these past several months. The road ahead may still be uncertain, and I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what it looks like for you personally. The resistance may not disappear overnight just because you now understand where it comes from. The weight you carry for others may not lighten immediately just because you finally have language for it. But you are not walking through any of it alone, and you were never meant to walk through it unnoticed. No matter how invisible this season has felt up until tonight, if these words found you at exactly the right moment, and something tells me they did, subscribe, because there is more of this journey still ahead of both of us, and I would genuinely rather walk through it together with you than have you face the rest of it without ever hearing clearly that you were seen, understood, and chosen. You were chosen for this week, for this exact season, for whatever is coming next in your life, whether that feels far away or closer than you think. And nothing about that truth is a coincidence, including the fact that you are hearing it right now.